The gods were angry and shook the land. Cracks rent the earth, said old Khaldun, his crag-featured face lit by firelight. It was into one of these fissures that a young man ventured. He found an opening, the entrance to a tomb, hidden for the jackal knows how long. The man had little ones to feed and a wife to please, and so he ventured in, lured by opportunity. Adults and children alike crowded in close to hear the old storyteller's words. They were all weary. They had traveled far that day, and the Shuriman's sun had been unrelenting. But Khaldun's tales were a rare treat. They drew their cloaks tight around their shoulders against the chill of the night and leaned in. The air was cool in the tomb, a merciful relief from the scorching heat outside. The young man lit a torch. Its light made shadows dance before him. He stepped cautiously, wary of traps. He was poor, but he was no fool. The walls inside were smooth obsidian and carved with ancient writings and images he could not read. He was a simple man, but he studied the images. He saw a boy prince sitting cross-legged upon a sun disk borne by a team of servants, a beaming smile upon his face. Chests of coins and riches were piled before him, the offerings of strangely garbed, bowing emissaries. He saw other carvings, again showing the smiling prince, this time walking among his people. Their heads were pressed to the ground before him. Stylized rays of sunshine radiated from the boy's crown. Before one of these images was a small gold statue. It alone was worth more than he could have hoped to earn in 10 lifetimes. The young man took it, slipping it into his satchel. He did not intend to linger. He knew it would not be long before others came upon this place. When they did, he wanted to be gone. Greed makes fools of even the greatest men, and he knew that others would willingly spill his blood to claim that golden statue, and the other riches that were surely further in. Avarice was not one of the young man's faults. However, he felt no need to delve further. The other treasures hidden here were someone else's to claim. He looked upon one last image before he left the tomb. It showed the boy prince dead, lying upon a bier. Those closest to him were wailing, but further back, people were celebrating. Had the boy prince been beloved, or had he been a tyrant? There was no way of knowing. That was when he heard it, a sound in the darkness that made his skin crawl. He looked around, wide-eyed, holding his torch up before him. Nothing. "Who's there?" he said. Silence was his only answer. The young man shook his head. "It is just the wind, you fool," he thought. "Nothing but the wind." Then he heard it again, more distinctly this time. A child was crying in the darkness further in the tomb. Heard anywhere else, his paternal instinct would have been to go to the sound, but here, in the darkness of a funeral tomb, he wanted to run, but he did not. The sobbing touched his heart. It was filled with such misery and grief. Was it possible there was another entrance to this tomb? Had the boy found his way down here and become lost? Torch held high, he crept forward. The weeping continued, echoing faintly through the gloom. A wide chamber opened before him, its floor black and highly reflective. Golden artifacts and jewel-inlaid walls glinted within. Gingerly, he entered the room. He stepped back sharply as his heels sent ripples spreading out across the floor. Water. The floor was not made of reflective obsidian. It was covered in water. Kneeling, he scooped a handful of it to his lips. He spat it out immediately. It was salt water. Here, in the heart of Shurima, 1,000 leagues from the nearest sea. He heard the sound of the boy weeping once more, closer now. Holding his torch before him, the young man glimpsed a shape at the edge of its light. It appeared to be the child, sitting with his back to the man. Carefully, he stepped into the room. The water upon the floor was not deep. The hairs on his back of his neck stood on end, and fear clutched at his chest. Yet, he did not turn to run. "Are you lost?" he asked as he stepped closer. "How did you get here?" The shadowed figure did not turn, but he did speak. I don't remember," he said. The sound swam around the young man, echoing off the walls. The boy spoke in an old dialect. His words were strange but understandable. "I don't remember who I am." "Be calm, child," said the man. "All will be well." He stepped closer, and the figure resolved itself before him. His eyes widened. The shape before him was a god statue carved in onyx, nothing more. It was not the source of the crying, nor the child's voice. That was when a small, dry hand grabbed him. The youngest of the listeners gasped with wide eyes. The other children laughed in false bravado. Old Khaldun smiled, a golden tooth glinting in the firelight. Then, he continued. The young man looked down. The linen-wrapped corpse of the tiny prince stood beside the man. Dull, ghostly light emanated from the deathly boy's eye sockets. Though his entire face was bound in burial wrappings, the corpse child held the man's hand. "Will you be my friend?" the boy asked, his voice muffled by linen. The young man lurched backward, breaking free of the child's grasp. The young man looked down at his arm in horror. His hand was shriveling, turning black and withered. The wasting touch then began to climb up his arm. He turned and ran. In his shock and haste, he dropped his lantern. It hissed as it fell into the lake of tears. The darkness descended. Still, he could just make out the glow of daylight up ahead. He ran toward it, scrambling desperately, even as the wasting death crept up his arm toward his heart. At any moment, he expected to feel the deathly boy's grasp upon him, but did not. After what felt like an eternity, but could only have been a matter of heartbeats, he burst from the darkness into the desert heat once more. "I'm sorry," echoed a mournful voice from the gloom behind him. "I didn't mean to." And thus, the tomb of Amumu was unearthed, said old Khaldun, and the deathly child released into the world. "But everyone knows he isn't real," cried one of the children, the oldest of them, after a moment of silence. "Amumu is real," said the youngest. "He's wandering the land trying to find a friend." "He's real, but he isn't a boy," said another. "He's a Yordle." Khaldun laughed and pushed himself to his feet with the aid of a gnarled walking stick. "I am old, and we have far to travel tomorrow," he said. "It is past time I was abed." His audience began to dissipate, smiling and talking in low, familial voices, but one child did not move. She stared at Khaldun, unblinking. "Grandfather," she said, "how did you lose your arm?" Old Khaldun looked down at the empty sleeve pinned at his shoulder, then flashed the girl a grin. "Good night, little one," he said with a wink. This world's familiar sun still hides below the horizon. Crude and unpolished earth unfurls below. Mountains contort into barriers that stretch like fingers across empty scrublands. Palaces, or rather, what pass for palaces, fail to loom over anything but the squattest of hills. The curvature of the planet meets the stars with a serenity and grace few of the dwellers below will ever witness. They are so scattered across the globe and grasp so blindly for any sort of understanding that it's no surprise they've been conquered and don't even comprehend their predicament. The fiery sheen I've gathered as I streak towards the preordained destination illuminates the world beneath me. Pockets of warring, fearful, rejoicing life tucks itself into any fertile nook it could find below. Oh, how they gaze and point as I streak over their heads. I've heard the names they call me: prophet, comet, monster, god, demon. So many names, all missing the mark. In a vast stretch of desert, I feel the twinges of familiar magic emanating from the seat of the premier civilization amongst these savages. Lo and behold, a massive sun disk is under construction. The poor, enslaved laborers beat their heads and rend their clothes in my wake. Their cruel masters see me, a streaking bolt of fire, as a portent of good omen, no doubt. My passing will be etched in their uncouth pictograms upon common stone, in homage to the great comet, the blessing of the sky god gracing their holy works, and so forth. The disk's sole purpose is to funnel the sun's majesty into the most renowned of these fleshy humanoids, transforming them into exactly what this planet needs: more insufferable demigods. This effort will undoubtedly backfire, but I suppose they might last a brief while, perhaps 1,000 years or so, before they fall and are supplanted by others. The desert below fades into the night, trailing behind me as I streak onward across lonely steppes. The over-rolling brown hills gently flecked with greenery, the pastoral scenery bellies of fields spattered with blood and littered with the dead and dying. Survivors hack away at each other with rough-hewn axes and scream battle cries. One side is losing quite badly. Stag skulls rest atop pikes stuck into the soil, next to writhing warriors. The few still on their feet are encircled by soldiers riding great, shaggy beasts. Those defeated, surrounded few see me, and valiance seems to surge through their veins. The wounded rise and grasp their axes and bows in a final stand that throws their foes off guard. I don't linger to see the rest of the little clash play out, because I've seen this scenario unfold 1,000 times. The survivors will scratch my comet likeness onto their cave walls. In 1,000 years, their descendants will fly my image on banners and undoubtedly ride into a tediously similar battle. For all their efforts to capture and record history, one ponders why they do not learn from their mistakes. That is a lesson even I have to suffer. I leave them to perpetuate their bleak cycle. My trajectory reveals more inhabitants. Their collective repertoire of reactions span the typical gamut: pointing, kneeling, sacrificing virgins upon stony altars. They look up and see a comet and never ask what lies beneath the blazing facade. Instead, they stamp it into their own self-centered worldviews, muddying the splendor of my visage. The few more advanced life forms and I use that description loosely. Gaze up and jot down my coordinates in scientific almanacs instead of using me as a prophecy fodder. It's mildly refreshing, but even their developing notions of intellect seems to indicate I am a regularly appearing phenomenon with a predictable orbit. Oh, the feats they could accomplish if only... Well, no use dwelling on the wasted potential of the simple-minded terrestrial born. It's not entirely their fault. Evolution does not seem to have a difficult time gaining traction on this world. But alas, the novelty of such infantile antics has worn thin. The grasping energies of my magical bondage have dragged me from one paltry world to another for centuries. Now it has led me back to this familiar and unpleasant rock. The star that floods its surface with light was one of my earliest creations, a confluence wrought of love and radiance. Ah, that cherished moment when she flared to life with colors only her creator could see. How I miss a star's crackling new energy warming my face and trickling through my fingers. Each star gives off a unique energy, precious and reflecting its creator's soul. There are cosmic snowflakes burning in defiance of the infinite dark. Unfortunately, the memories I long to dwell upon are tainted by betrayal. Yes, this was the place where Targon lured me into servitude, but now it is not the time to linger on past mistakes. Those musty aspects want me to seal yet another breach. In their name, of course. Then I see her, the world's imbued warrior is alone at the peak of one of the smaller summits, brandishing a starstone spear. She watches me through the veil of annexed flesh, a mere spark masquerading as lightning. A thick braid of auburn hair is draped over her shoulder, falling over a golden breastplate that covers pale, freckled skin. Her eyes, the only bit of her face not shielded by a battle-worn helmet, flash a jarring shade of red. She calls herself Pantheon, the warring fury of Targon incarnate. She is not the first of this world to wear the Pantheon mantle, nor will she be the last. Her glittering cape flaps out behind her as she raises her muscled arm and makes a motion like she's pulling on a great chain. The tug on my crudely enchanted tether wrenches me off course, toward the mountain upon which she stands, and she's yelling at me. She cries out with a voice that booms inside my head, transmitted through this insufferable star gem coronet. All sounds fade as she invades my mind. Dragon, she says, as if I'm a weak-winged beast of base orange flame, lucky if it can ignite a tree. Seal the gate, she commands, gesturing to the bottom of a rocky crevice with her pointy little spear. I don't need to see the violet erosion of reality swirling below. I could smell the festering miasma that poisons this world before I even arrived. I fix my eyes on Pantheon instead. She expects me to fall in line like a dog on a leash. Today will be different, for I've learned from my mistakes. Dragon, I purr. Are you sure commanding me with a low name is wise? Pantheon's grip on her spear loosens just enough for her to fumble the weapon for a fraction of a second. She takes a step back, away from me, as if a single stride's distance could protect her from my ire. Seal their gate, she says again, barking louder, as if perhaps the previous command went unheard. Her volume does little to mask the quiver in her voice. She thrusts her spear toward me, as if such a tiny weapon could pierce me. This is the first time I've ever seen an aspect of Targon shaken. She is not used to having to tell me twice. We'll deal with those chittering whores in due time, dear Pantheon. Do as you are commanded, dragon, this pantheon shouts, or this world is lost. This world was lost the moment Targon surrendered itself to arrogance. I feel Pantheon seething, mingle with confusion as she struggles to grab hold of my immaterial reins. She's only just now sensing what I could have come to learn. Targon is distracted and does not sense its magic faintly ebbing from my bonds. Pantheon bellows once more, and this time I cannot resist. The crude enchantment regains sovereignty over my will. I turn my attention toward the source of the breach, nestled in the basin of the once verdant valley, now strangled with creeping purple miasma. I sense the Voidborn, perversions of life tunneling through reality's firmament, sending tides of unseen energy coursing through the aether. They shred the veil that separates nothingness and form with their unwelcome passage. They're drawn to me, those multi-eyed carapace abominations. They seek to devour me, the greatest of their threats. From the reaches of my mind, I conjure an image of the solar furnaces I kindled before my fettering, which once ignited the hearts of stars. I lance out beams of pure starfire and incinerate wave after wave of those gnashing horrors, driving them backward into their oblique infinity. Smoldering husks rain from the sky. I'm a little surprised they aren't wholly disintegrated, but then again, the Voidborn don't know how things work in this universe. A pulsing sickness lingers in the air. From the epicenter of the corruption, I feel a will hungry and indomitable. And far from the typical mindlessness I'm accustomed to from these Voidborn aberrations. The pulsating wound on reality yawns and buckles, distorting and warping all it touches. Whatever exists on the other side is laughing. Pantheon shouts another command at me, but I ignore her words. This anomalous fissure is in the universe entrances me. This is not the first of its kind I've had to deal with, but this one feels different, and I can't help but admire the marvelously terrifying manipulation of the barriers between realms. Few beings could fathom its complexities, let alone possess the sheer magnitude of power needed to rend the fabric of existence. In my heart, I know a wound so exquisite could never be orchestrated by scuttling creatures. No. There must be more behind this intrusion. I shudder at the thought of what kind of entity is capable of inducing such a volatile rift. I don't need Pantheon's barked orders to tell me what to do next. Her array of requests has always been a rather limited imagination anyway. She wants me to hurl a star at the rift. As if one can simply cauterize such moldering interdimensional abrasions and be done with it. These obtuse demigods are my captors? Fine. At least they're not too far off their logic by thinking a few searing cosmic wonders will remedy this problem. I will play the role of the obedient servant just a little while longer. I enjoy what I do next, partly because I'll remember it, partly because it feels good to let a little of the old power loose, but mostly because I wish to remind whatever intelligence that controls this void incursion that nobody laughs at me in my plane of existence. The base elements in the atmosphere rally to my cause, accreting into the plasmic anomaly. The swelling stardust detonates at my unspoken command. The result is a dwarf replica of one of my majestic glories burning in the depths of space. After all, I can't fling a full-fledged star at this fragile world. The young star's shimmering brilliance flies from my hands. It's joined by two sisters always by my side. They careen around me in a radiant ballet, their white-hot cores devouring the gathering clouds of dust and matter I draw towards us. We become a storm of stars, the night sky incarnate, a maddening gyre of starfire. I conjure eddies of searing stardust, exhaling a heat so pure and dense it collapses the aura of this world just the tiniest bit, forever marring the planet's curvature. Coruscating strands of stellar flame peer away from the center of the rift. Gravity melts in undulating waves of color most eyes will never be able to witness. My stars wrap matter as more fuel coalesces into their cores, causing them to shine brighter, burn hotter. The whole spectacle is breathtaking, a cascading dance of blinding light and searing heat so hot that for a fleeting moment, new spectra are birthed into existence. My spine tingles just a little bit at how good it feels. Trees splinter, rivers evaporate, the mountain walls of the valley crumble in smoky avalanches. The tiresome laborers erecting their sun disk, the soldiers taking the hill, the stargazers, the worshippers, the terrified, the doomsday prophets, the hopeless, the rising kings, all those who beheld the streaking comet with selfish eyes witnessed the ensuing supernova as an early dawn. Across this pitiful globe, my radiance turns darkest night into blinding days. What fictions will they conjure to explain this phenomenon? Even my Targonian masters have rarely witnessed such a display of my power. Certainly, no terrestrial world has ever borne scars as severe as what is left of that once verdant valley. When I am finished, nothing remains. Not even this incarnation of Pantheon. I can't say I'll miss her, or her mindless barking. In the glowing aftermath of my carnage, the smoldering once mountains collapse into the molten rubble streams now flowing through the valley. This is the scar I have left upon this world. A surge of damning pain shoots through my body, radiating from that infernal crown. I am about to pay. My head snaps up and my eyes drink the bitter sight of a dying star. My heart's clasp shut. My mind reels. An overwhelming sense of despair ricochets through my very soul, emanating from a deep and immediate sorrow, like the pulsing realization you've lost something precious, and you know it's all your fault. Some curious life forms I met long ago once asked how it was possible for me to remember every star I've created. If only they could feel what it was like to create a single star, they would understand the sheer irrelevance of that question. That's how I know when even one of my darlings rinks out from existence, ejecting jets of energy, and with it, the very substance of my own spirit. I see her death knell in the heavens above. She shines brightly one last time in a pyroclasm that momentarily drowns her brothers and sisters. My heart shatters as the heavens are diminished in brutal retribution for turning my power on one of Targon's own. A sun is the price of a single pantheon. This is the cost of my unfettered wrath. This is the kind of boorish sorcery I must deal with. Within seconds, they have regained control of my reins and call me to a new task. On no other world have I exhibited such a display of freedom, no matter how fleeting it was. What's more is that I have learned from their mistakes. A bit of me is free now, and in time, I will return to this world, tap into this mysterious well of energy, and cast off the rest of my tether. I tune into that existence of war, twisting and contorting within fleshy vessels scattered across the cosmos. It wasn't happy about losing its immortal avatar on this world. Already, a new doomed host has been chosen to transform into the next iteration of Pantheon, a soldier from Rakor, a tribe who cling to the base of Targon's mountain, siphoning off its power like barnacles. One day, I shall meet this new incarnation of Pantheon. Perhaps he will learn to find a new weapon and abandon that ludicrous spear. I sense Pantheon's celestial kin scattered across the cosmos. In a single instance, all of their attention is focused on this world, where one of their earthly aspects was vaporized by their own weapon. Their confusion is mingled with a growing desperation as they contend with each other to regain their control over me. How I wish I could see their faces. As I launch myself from the gravity of this world, this ruined era, I sense an emotion I have never felt from Targon before. Fear. Snow falls all morning, blanketing the earth in fresh coats of white. One by one, feathery flakes trickle from the sky, gently at first, and then rapidly in unison. Soon, the howling blizzard muffles all sounds, save for a peculiar racket coming from a nearby cave, where a shock of orange and blue bounces up and down, left to right. Nar bustles about, annoyed at the world. He has been drawing in the snow under the shelter of rock and stone, but nothing appears the way he imagines, gripping a bone boomerang almost the size of his torso. The young Yordle curses at the ground. Shubanufa, says Nar. This means one of two things. Either he believes the snow is being uncooperative, or he wants some sweet milk. No one can say for certain which one it is. With a jump and a skip, Nar tumbles from one unfinished sketch to another, each depicting similar scenes. There they are, bands of carefree Yordles living happily among the tribes of the frigid north. Sometimes wild beasts stand ahead above his kin. Other times, Nar himself towers over everyone else. These little differences do not faze him. Instead, his wide eyes fixate on his boomerang, his paw guiding it to trace out a grand shape with long, sweeping strokes. Onalega, Nar mutters to himself. This means he wishes not to be distracted. In the past, others have confused this with Opalaga, meaning he would very much enjoy a hug. Placing the boomerang in his mouth to free up his paws, Nar leans downward. His claws pick away bothersome specks of dirt. His nose sniffs the ground, searching for any stray pests daring to deface his work. Pleased with the results, Nar somersaults back to take a wider look. The powdery snow paints the picture of a one-eyed monster with tentacles the size of mountains. Wabo, Nar cheers as his boomerang drops from his jaw. The monster is the right amount of scary, just as he imagined. With one arm, it slices through an entire herd of Elnuk. With another, it holds a whole bundle of Elkir, like sticks. Ganalumo, Nar grumbles. Upon further inspection, it appears his Elnuk look too much like Elkir. This will not do. As he moves to touch up his piece, he stops. His large ears perk, their violet insides twitching with vigilance. Footsteps approach in fours from outside his cave. Perhaps it is the monster, and perhaps it has come to express its discontent with how it is being portrayed. Grasping his boomerang, Nar stands upright on his two hind legs. Nogotak, he declares, ready to face his rival once more. In truth, he is thrilled. Ever since he woke up from that long nap, he has wondered where the monster took his friends. Finally, he's about to get some answers. But what trespasses into his cave sees with not one eye, but two. And rather than tentacles, it has legs, stout and stocky. Coarse fur covers its entire body, forming a frosted mane to crown its head and back. Its scarred face appears worn and bitter, marked by two ivory tusks and a stiff, pudgy snout. This is a strange-looking creature, Nar thinks to himself. As the giant Dravosk boar lumbers inside, it sees only the comfort of stone overhead. Its sighs are deep, its breath strands of mist fogging the chill air. The beast's hooves shake the ground beneath, stirring up snow like splashes of milk. After a few heavy steps, all of Nar's art is ruined. Rag! Whap! Nar's boomerang strikes the boar right between its eyes. The dazed beast shakes its head, blinking hastily as it lets out an angered growl. Nar pants in a frenzy, wielding his prized weapon up high, enough for the boar to identify its source of pain. Like thunder and lightning, the cave booms twice with roars of rage. Tumbling out come the boar and a positively enormous Yordle, grown to the size larger than even his foe. Nar pummels the intruder with his now massive fisted hands. His wrath fuels every punch, jabbing blow after blow into the boar's thick hide. The fight seems to end as quickly as it began, until the savage beast somehow wrangles its hooves under Nar's chest to kick him away. The colossal Yordle collapses next to his cave, bundles of snow rising as he lands. With his spiny back exposed, his head woozy, Nar hears repeated huffs and puffs, and a clatter of those same bullish hooves scraping faster and faster on the wintry soil. The blizzard wails louder than before, as though the Freljord is bracing itself for the coming loss of its own. Nar, the hulking Yordle bellows, leaping away from the boar's charge. In a flash, he slams his bulky arms against the beast's behind, sending it forward to crash into the rocky wall of the cave's entrance. A stunted screech pierces the wind. Frozen rocks crumble onto the boar, now lying still. Nar trudges towards the beast, his breath short and rushed. He nudges its limp body with his foot. There is no resistance. He decides it has fallen asleep, but remains perplexed why its eyes are open. Curiously, the snow around the board turns a deep red. All of this seems quite odd, and yet it is not the first time that has piqued Nar's interest. His memory flickers with similar images. Before the long nap, he would see different tribes yelling gibberish as they threw pointed sticks at one another. Their game looked at once exciting and exhausting, and Nar would watch them until enough of one side fell asleep on red snow. They must have been awfully tired, just like this strange, tusked Yordle. Thinking of those bygone days makes Nar quiet. He remembers waking up from the long nap, believing the world took away everything he ever knew. His breath slows, his shoulders slump, his feet shrinking until even he would not believe that he stands in the very own footprints from mere seconds ago. The small Yordle dashes into the cave to retrieve his boomerang, hugging it with all his might. It is the one thing that did not leave him after the long nap. For a moment, Nar glances at the boar. It rests out in the elements without a whisper. Setting his boomerang lightly on the ground, he skitters back into the storm. The blizzard surges on. Nar is not bothered. But maybe the slumbering beast is. With his tiny paws, he gathers all the snow he can and carefully places it atop the boar. It is sleeping after all, and it will need a blanket. Nico was familiar with the shapes of humans, and while they had their quirks, socks for instance, why? They never struck her as particularly strange, not until the outpost at Koldoga. The ugly compound was carved into the cliffs near the outskirts of the jungle by a tribe of humans called Noxians. They had inhabited the outpost for a while, it seemed, based on how irritable yet comfortable they seemed performing their daily routines. Nico wondered, were they friendly? Did they enjoy cheese breads? There were other questions too, but these were at the top of her mind when she decided to see for herself. Under the cover of night, she slinked in and out of the shadows until she reached the gate. A single guard stood watch. This was not a problem at all. Nico loved disguises. Adopting another entity's shape meant sharing their Shoma, a complex web of emotions and recent memories. She reached out with her own Shoma, feeling for the outer boundary of the guard's aura, which extended far beyond her body. When her spirit met the guard's, a name floated to the surface of Nico's mind. Eywa. From across the desert, a color came next. Burnt orange bitterness over her lost home still graced Eywa's mind. The blue salt resentment about her station. The backwater nowhere outpost with no strategic value, but tried telling the commander that. This Eywa had dark skin and beautiful oval eyes. She was strong, but few took her seriously, since she was a mudheel, a simple soldier. Fascinated, Nico shed her natural chameleon-like appearance for Eywa's shape. Nico's skin swirled as her body morphed. It tickled her, but dizzied Eywa. She used the guard's disorientation to slip beyond the gates and into the quiet corridors of the outpost, firmly incognito. Eywa, a shrill voice cried, "Get back to your post." The rotund man, his belly poking out from under his breastplate, seemed startled. In the crook of his elbow were several toasted tafa roots and 2 loaves of crusty bread. I heard noises. Nico put on her best impression of Eywa's voice. It's probably bloody fur tails. Better hunt them down. Then we can enjoy some fur tail pie. Not fur tails. Nico did not want to eat those curious furry little creatures. Are you saying there's an intruder? The man's eyes widened. Nico did not know the meaning of this word, so she shrugged and nodded yes. This gesture, she figured, could surely lead to little trouble. Wilderfolk, he said. Could be a scouting party. What are you doing here? Raise the alarm. Where is... alarm? Have you lost your brain, Eywa? I'll do it. See the physician when this is over. With that, the heavy man scurried off, cramming his snacks into his pocket. But before he was gone, Nico mingled her spirit's motes with his, borrowing his shape, setting Eywa for this, Yubbers. Yubbers. Nico as Yubbers said out loud. That was a fun name to say. Yubbers did not like to be near the front lines of war, so Calduga was the quiet and welcome assignment. His strength was in corresponding with the Empire. He was now scared, a rubbery ashy yellow. As the thought of an attack by the Winderfolk, Nico liked this man, but not the feeling of the masculine Shoma, too, not Nico. Most importantly, she felt Yubber's shock of running into another soldier after he had raided the larder. Food was nearby. As she headed down a hallway filled with doors, behind one of which must be the larder, Nico heard a commotion out in the main yard, loud voices shouting. She dashed to the nearest window and peered outside. Real Yubbers was shouting at real Eywa. Uh-oh. Boo-ong. Boo-ong. The sound of very loud bells startled Nico as Yubbers. Every door in the hallway burst open. Several half-dressed Noxians charged out, their eyes blinking away sleep. She tried to avoid the stampede, but was swept along, away from the larder. Nico, as Yubbers, found herself pushed out into the yard with about a dozen armed soldiers. I don't know what you're talking about. Eywa's face was stressed and defiant. I've been standing guard all night long. You were in the barracks, said Yubbers, flanked by 2 soldiers. Take this deserter to the brig, he pointed to Eywa. Then it happened. Yubbers saw Nico as Yubbers. Before Yubbers and the other soldiers deduced whether their double vision was the byproduct of the late hour or not, Nico disappeared into the fog of another person. This time it was a warrior named Seda. She was a killing machine, so vicious, spicy pink. Seda had rushed to the yard so fast she neglected boots. This was fine by Seda and Nico, as both liked going barefoot. It reminded Seda of the sun-scorched province where she was born. Agile, silent. Just as Nico was thinking she could enjoy being Seda, real Seda leapt at her doppelganger. The 2 Sedas wrestled in a ruckus of soldiers fighting and pulling at each other. When the commotion settled, only one Seda remained. Of course, it was the real Seda. But Yubbers had her placed in chains. Seda pointed out that 2 Yubbers had been seen, and he too was placed in chains. Then, Eywa. This continued for a while. Chains went on, chains came off. Nobody was sure who was who and who was not who, and who was lying about not being who they were when they really were someone else. Even the outpost commander seemed uncertain what the source of all the trouble was, and Nico didn't take his shape at all. This fact came to light and only fueled more suspicion. Was the commander secretly harboring some monster? The one thought that everyone shared, Nico had learned from being everyone, was that no one liked the commander. He was too secretive and weak-willed. He had lost an important battle and been demoted to, as Awa put it, this backwater nowhere outpost with no strategic value. Everyone turned to the commander, and he was the first to die. The mess only got messier from there. Soldiers screamed and fought and pointed blame. Some believed they were... I've never seen that word before. Ensorcelled by a soul-eating demon. One veteran ranger told a harrowing tale of a jungle plant monster that replaced people with mindless copies of themselves with vines for veins. Amidst accusations, elaborate quizzes of minuscule facts from times shared in training, and shouts of traitor, Nico tried to calm the troops. What if... Nico, as a cook named Tomsey, said, "It is no monster. It is someone who is nice, lost, and a little scared, but just wants to make friends and eat cheese breads and be happy, yes?" Everyone in the Caldoga outpost knew at once this was the imposter. Swords came out and the stabbing began. By dawn, only 4 soldiers remained alive. They stared hollow-eyed at the blood pooled under the commander's dead body and at each other. Nico watched them from the safety of the larder. The commander did not want us to abandon the outpost, Theta said. She knelt down by the body and blessed him with a gesture of her people. Exile or execution is our only future. A moment of solemn silence passed through like a haunted, foul wind despite the floral notes of tafa flowers blooming somewhere nearby. Yubbers straightened up. "We'll send a messenger, fat to command. The Winterfolk have overrun Calduga. We do not expect to survive, but we will die for the glory of Noxus. Then we abandon the outpost, leave the bodies where they lie. Theta, you go north, Gurnuk will go east, Awa west, and I'll head south. If anyone crosses path with another, it is a duel to the death for one of you." Awa shot a wary glance at Yubbers. "Or you. Is the beast in disguise?" The soldiers left an hour later. They did not look back at their abandoned post or each other as they went their separate ways, unsure of who was really who. Humans were indeed strange creatures, Nico thought. Nestled among the eclectic storefronts of Piltover sat the workshop of the renowned artificer Corin Revik. Famous for his masterful craft in artificial limbs, Corin's intricate brass designs made the prosthetics both breathtakingly beautiful and often superior to the originals. His daughter, Oriana, served as his apprentice. Friendly and inquisitive, she was a natural fit to run the shop and blossomed into a capable artisan in her own right. Oriana had an adventurous spirit, but her father, fearing for her safety, never allowed her to venture beyond their neighborhood. Instead, he took her to the theater where dancers, through leaps and pirouettes, told stories of distant lands. Oriana dreamed of visiting these strange and marvelous places, and would scurry home to build clockwork dancers of her own. News of disaster in the undercity of Zon made its way to their shop. An explosion had ruptured a chemical line, venting clouds of poisonous gas. Oriana insisted they help the victims, but Corin forbade it. Zon was far too dangerous. So, With as many supplies as she could carry, Oriana snuck away in the night and rode the Hexdralic Descender into the depths. The devastation was overwhelming. Debris still filled the streets, and Zonites walked through the toxic haze, faces covered with little more than oily rags. Night after night, Oriana repaired respirators and installed exofilters. She even gave her own mask to a child who could scarcely breathe. Her father was furious, but soon after her return, Oriana fell gravely ill. Her lungs were ravaged past all hope of recovery. Refusing to accept this, Corin threw himself into his most ambitious project yet, a fully functional set of artificial lungs. After weeks of sleepless nights, he completed his desperate task and carried out the surgery himself. To keep her from ever venturing too far again, the lungs were wound with a special key Corin kept in his safe. Oriana returned to work, and yet the poison continued to spread throughout her body. Father and daughter worked feverishly to develop new implants and prosthetics, replacing each of her organs as they failed. Piece by piece, Oriana's body was transformed from mortal to mechanical until only her healthy heart remained. This long and expensive process cost Corin his fortune, forcing him to relocate their business to Zon, but he saved his daughter's life. For a time, they were happy. Gradually, Oriana began to feel disconnected from who she had been before. Old memories felt like stories. Even her creativity began to fade, and her beloved clockwork dancers became more like masterfully tuned mechanisms than works of art. But even as time seemed to stand still for Oriana, it marched onward for her father. Long, lean years brought Corin agonizing chest spasms that meant he could no longer work, and Oriana was forced to provide for him. She'd become profoundly adept at crafting her figurines, even if she took only distant pleasure in recalling what once inspired their creation. The miniature dancers brought in good coin and barter, but never enough to afford the one thing she believed could save her father. For that, she turned to a local chem baron. Oriana never asked how the man came by a Hextech crystal. She simply paid what he asked. Even so, before she could use it, the chem baron returned, demanding a second payment, then a third. When the money ran out, Oriana knew his next visit would end in violence. She looked to the crystal device, still incomplete, too unrefined and powerful for a human body. She saw the logical solution. She didn't need her human heart anymore, and Corin needed a heart no one could ever take from him. She spent weeks in preparation, building a clockwork orb, integrating it into her own mechanisms, readying it to house the crystal so she could defend herself in the journey ahead. Slipping her father a sleeping draught, she commenced the surgery. Corin became one with the last remnant of the daughter he had known and loved. She listened to his steady heartbeat through the night, the quiet hum of Hextech in the beautifully intricate ball by her side. Only then did she realize she had shed the last of her humanity. But she felt no fear or remorse, merely acceptance. She had become something entirely new, a lady of clockwork, and she needed to find where in the world's vast machine she might fit. At dawn, she collected the key that would wound her lungs, a single pulse from her ball, welding it firmly to her back. Then she left for good. Corin woke up to find his workshop filled with hundreds of figurines, but among them was one he vowed never to sell, pirouetting to an endless ballet, a golden dancer that needed no key. Talia was out running the sandstorm when she first noticed the water. In the beginning, it was faint, just a cool dampness she felt as she lifted the stones from deep beneath the sand. As she drew closer to old Shurima, wet streaks dripped from each new stone as they were weeping. Talia knew the rock had stories to tell as she sped across the desert, but she didn't have time to listen, to hear if they were tears of joy or sadness. When she was close enough to be covered by the shadow of the great sun disk, water from underground aquifers began to pour off the stone she rode like little rivers. And when she finally arrived at the gate, Talia heard the deafening water rushing along the bedrock. The oasis of the dawn, the mother of life, roared beneath the sands. The people of her tribe had followed the seasonal waters for hundreds of years. The best chance of finding her family was to follow the water, and to Talia's dismay, the water in Shurima now flowed from a single source, as it had in ages past. The tragic remains of the capital city had always been avoided, almost as much as the great Sai and deadly creatures that hunted there. Even thieves knew to keep their distance from the city, until now. Leah brought the rock she rode to a sudden halt, nearly stumbling from it as she pushed the stone quickly below the desert's surface. She looked around. The woman from Vekara had been right. This place was no longer a forgotten ruin, haunted by ghosts in sand. Indeed, the makeshift camp just outside the walls scrambled with life, like an anthill before a flood, not knowing who those people are. She decided it might be best to reveal no more than what was necessary. It seemed there was a tribal representation from all four corners of her homeland, but as Talia searched their faces, she saw none that were familiar. The people here were torn. They argued about the merits of staying in the temporary camps versus seeking shelter within the city. Some worried that just as it rose, the city would fall again, burying any caught inside. Some saw the storm that bristled with unnatural lighting and thought their chances were better within the walls. Even if the walls had once been lost to the sand for generations, all of them moved quickly, packing haphazardly and worriedly glancing at the sky. Talia herself had won the race with the tempest, but it wouldn't be long before the sand lashed against the gates. "Now's the time to decide," a woman called out to her, her voice almost lost to the noise of the churning oasis waters of the rising storm. "Are you going in or leaving, girl?" Talia turned to face the woman. She was Shuriman, but other than that, unknown to her. "I'm looking for my family." Talia gestured to her tunic. "They're weavers. The Hawk Father has promised protection to all those within the walls," the woman said. "Hawk Father?" The woman looked at Talia's concerned face and smiled, taking her hand. "Azir has returned to us, ascended. The oasis of the dawn flows again. A new day has come for Shurima." Talia looked around at the people. It was true. They were hesitant to move far into the massive capital, but the fear that worried their faces was more for the unnatural storm than the city or its returned emperor. The woman continued. There were weavers here this morning. They decided to wait out the storm inside. The woman pointed onto throngs of people pushing in toward the newly beating heart of Shurima. We must hurry. They are closing the gates. Talia found herself being pulled toward one of the capital's great gates by the woman and driven from behind by a crowd of strangers who had decided at the last minute not to brave the sands by themselves. Still, there were a few groups clustered near their circled beasts, determined to face the storm, as Shuriman caravans had for generations. In the distance, strange and threatening bolts of lightning crackled at the edge of the whirlwind. Old Shuriman traditions might not survive the storm's passing. Talia and the woman were pushed across the golden threshold that separated Shurima from the deserts surrounding it. The heavy gates swung close behind them with a resounding thud. The immensity of old Shurima's glory stretched out before them. The crowd hugged the thick protective walls, unsure where to go. It was as if they sensed the empty streets belonged to someone else. I'm sure your people are somewhere within the city, must have kept close to the gates. Few are brave enough to go farther than that. I hope you find what you are looking for. The woman let go of Talia's hand and smiled. Water and shade to you, sister. Water and shade to you. Talia's voice dropped off as the woman disappeared into the milling crowd. The city that had been quiet for millennia now pulsed with life, silently watching over Shurima's newest denizens were helmeted guards that wore desert cloaks in gold and crimson. Though there was no trouble, Talia continued to feel there was something not right about this place. Talia reached out to the thick wall to steady herself. She gasped. The stone throbbed beneath the flat of her palm. Pain, a terrible, blinding pain overwhelmed her. Tens of thousands of voices were etched into the rock. The fear and torment of their last moments before their lives were cut down and their shadows were seared into the stone screamed in her mind. Talia tore her hand from the stone wall and stumbled. She had felt vibrations in stone before, reverberations of memories long since past, but never like this. The knowledge of what had come before felled her. Wild-eyed, she stood and stared, seeing the city anew. Revulsion washed over her. This wasn't a city reborn, it was an empty tomb risen from the sand. The last time Azir had made promises to the people of Shurima, it had cost them their lives. I must find my family, she whispered. I look out across the once verdant field, now scarred and ruined by the toil of battle. The loss of life will be immense, but I cannot save those who seek their own destruction. All those sons, all those fathers, all those futures lost. Demacians and Noxians, ever at each other's throats, magnetically drawn to one another by something lesser than both. Plenty of defenders exist for their lofty ideals, and they all stand in my way, almost gleefully slaughtering themselves over a scrap of land with no idea of its true importance. Two armies entwined, both committed to their ruinous dance. I could try to ruin them, reason with them, ask them to move their brawl elsewhere, but my former countrymen now see me as something between a traitor and a wrathful god. And the Noxians, well, the Noxians have always been short on patience. My usual weapons, wit, charm, and warmth, are useless in this cauldron of desperation, so I push aside those who would slow me and wade into those who would stop me. Every kind of horror one soul can inflict on another rages around me as I near my goal. And there, dead center of the rolling fury of battle, the blaze of color calls to me. A delicate life about to be snuffed out amid the mud, the gore-covered boots standing bravely, unbowed by the thudding dullness of the armored brutes around it. Its beauty rings out like a single crystal bell. It is the last flower of its kind. If it dies, no more shall bloom. I cannot allow it to perish. The two opposing commanders pause in their combat as I approach, an uninvited guest at their last moments. They turn to me, suddenly allied in their outrage at my intrusion. I stand at the very eye of the two armies, seemingly inviting the cold embrace of death from all sides. But unlike all those who are now taking wary steps towards me, their sword hands trembling, I know why I fight. The humidity of Tonica Market and the crowd's fragrant odor usually rushed buyers into hasty decisions, but Hadley stood transfixed. Her eyes had fallen upon the strange, tangled bud encased with red, withered leaves, a specimen she had never seen before. "You don't want that," the old florist said. "It's a rare night-blooming zycad, plucked from the southern jungles where sunlight never touches the forest floor. It's more for potion brewers or alchemists." The merchant directed her gaze to a bouquet of sapphire roses. "Now these are from fair Ionia. Adapted them to our robust Kumangra soil myself. Or perhaps some pearls of the moon?" Hadley was not swayed. Sapphire roses and pearls of the moon flashed their colors for any eyes to see. This zycad held exotic potential like the kraken lilies along the Serpentine Delta, or Perthen corpse tulips. Rare flowerings were precisely her Casworth's type of indulgence. "I'll take the zycad." The florist welcomed the gold pressed into his palm, despite the doubt scrawled across his face. He deftly cradled the bud in a nest of damp silk and planted the parcel into Hadley's waiting hands. She noticed the aerial rootlets clinging to a shard of something hard and chalk white. "What's this?" "Zycads cling to foreign objects," the merchant said. "That one's grafted to a bit of bone." Casworth was bent over his antique death, scribbling notes in the margins of his leather by candlelight. He didn't look up until Hadley set the ceramic upon his table. The strange zycad, half buried in a mound of wetted soil, already seemed happy, its reds and greens vibrant and slick with life. A budding gift for a blooming businessman. She planted a kiss on Casworth's cheek. Feeling clever, he smiled and turned to examine the specimen. "When you said you needed flowers to brighten the place up, I assumed they'd be colorful." Casworth jabbed the plant with his quill. What is this curious fellow? A most extravagant gift to celebrate the opening of the Upper Kumangra's newest trading supplier, Casworth's Exotic Goods. Casworth pulled his wife onto his lap. Well, if you say this is a rarity indeed, then we are in for a treat. He kissed her sweetly. A single petal opened up, unfolding into the darkening room. It's beginning, Hadley said. Will you be up all night? Most likely. There are still several invoices that need rubber stamping. The partners still have concerns about the shipping lanes. Hadley yawned. Don't let me bore you, dear wife. Run along to bed. I'll wake you when it starts to flower. Thank you, sweet husband. Hadley awoke to a creeping sensation on her ankle. Infernal skitter ants were everywhere. This near to the jungle? She kicked it away. Sleepily blinking, she turned to the empty pillow next to her. Casworth hadn't come to bed. The nagging insect was undaunted and was crawling further up her shin. She flung off the bedsheets and saw that there was no insect, but rather a tendril vine weaving through her toes, entangling her ankle and twining around her leg. Panic shoved sleep from her mind. She kicked out, but could not get the green and red shoots to release her leg. They tightened, biting into her flesh. She pried them off with her fingernails. Her hands bled from thorny splinters. The snaking stalks wound a trail from under the bedchamber door, where they sprouted aerial rootlets to climb the bed frame. Her mind immediately flashed to Casworth. Armed with a flickering lantern and a pair of sewing shears, Hadley followed the vines through the hallway of their manse. Their circumference widened the closer she stepped towards its source. What she now saw was in Casworth's study. The door took several tries to open. Hadley hadn't known what to expect, but it wasn't this. The room was covered floor to ceiling with floral growth. A riot of obscene colors danced in her lantern's flicker. Exotic bulbs dangled from the walls, their finger-like leaves undulating as if drawing breath. Flowers seemed to mock her through the darkness, flashing their rainbow petals like signal fires. All had sprouted from a singular dark nexus, an enormous closed flower bud, which lay at the fainting couch by the fireplace, where Hadley herself often read while Casworth worked. Bits of ceramic and soil lay strewn about. The Zykid had outgrown its habitat. All manner of protrusion crept from its pulsating petals. Everything in Hadley's mind screamed for her to flee her home, put it to the torch, and burn that hideous bouquet. But not without Casworth. Vines twisted around the legs of the chair, the legs of the study table, the legs of... Still sitting in his chair, Casworth was cocooned from head to toe by a writhing mass of leaves. Hadley reached his side, bare feet slipping on the foliage underfoot. She cut frantically at the strangling vines, but each snip of the shears only made them tighten their grip and produce little thorns that pierced her and her husband. Blood trickled out. Where the drops landed, Zykid blossoms burst forward to feed. Hadley freed one of Casworth's hands. It was pale and cold to the touch. A stench filled the air like a rotting corpse. With tears in her eyes, she turned her head towards the fainting couch, where the Zykid bud was flowering. The stench grew worse. Hadley retched. The gargantuan petals peeled backward in colorful layers. revealing oblong petals of striking scarlet and deep green, garlanded in black tips, revealing a woman in place of the stamen. Her hair was red as blood, her flesh like leaves, vines and petals wreathed in her deadly beauty. Her eyes opened. They reminded Hadley of a panther's, narrow irises seeing only prey. The woman who blossomed from the flower arose. Hadley clutched the shears like a dagger. "You wish to prune me already?" the thing said, its deep voice ensnaring Hadley. "What are you?" "The bloom you long to witness." The stench turned. Gone was the reek of death. Hadley inhaled sweet fragrances, orange blossoms, the aroma of sapphire roses, the fruity scent of kraken lilies, the musk of pearls of the moon, the delicate hints of wisteria. There were more secret flowers, but she somehow knew their names. They smelled of colors her eyes never saw. A name formed in Hadley's mind. Zyra. "Thank you for the lovely garden," Zyra said, nodded towards Casworth's remains. "You tended me well, but we need more sustenance to make the soil here more fertile." Hadley saw visions of a world covered by a bouquet of colorful death. It was a beautiful riot of hues, soft and fluttering, choking cities. There were no graves, no war, no money. Hadley was breathless. She didn't even feel the vines pull her down, nor the thorns bury themselves in her flesh, rending her skin, spilling her blood. "Step into the garden that ever grows," Zyra whispered through the stems and petals. "Death blossoms, and you don't want to miss the colors, do you?" Hadley did not respond, for she was with the flowers. And with that last story, I am going to say goodnight. I hope everyone who is listening is having a relaxing time. And I hope anyone who may have fallen asleep, I hope you are sleeping well and having very magical dreams. You are all incredible, incredible people. And I thank you for being here with me. Sleep well, everyone. Good night.